it's really up to you, and it's really truly up to whatever makes you feel the most confident or the less anxious when it comes to your money. Hello and welcome to the Neighborhood Money Podcast, a video podcast here to talk about personal finance and helping you build a life you deserve. It is springtime, so in today's episode number 36, Drew and I are gonna talk all about cleaning up your finances. More so, spring cleaning for your finances. Actually, Drew, we've got a really cool article that we both found by basically happenstance. You sent it to me, and I was like, "Hey, I actually had that saved as the article to go over for this week's podcast."
I couldn't believe that when I texted over like, "Hey, Cam, what do you think about this one for this week's episode?" And then you said, "I literally just saved that one." Great minds think alike, I guess.
But I mean, it's so timely, right? So the name of the article is Three Ways to Spring Clean Your Finances This Season by Sri Taylor. And it's actually a really it's short article, but it brings a lot of good things to think about this springtime as you're getting outside and doing your traditional spring cleaning. Don't forget about your finances.
It does bring up a lot of good points, and one of them is actually probably spring cleaning for me. And now that it's getting a bit warmer outside, I actually have quite a project in the garage to clean up. I was going to do it after the remodel the kitchen, and then it started getting cold, and I said, I'll just wait till a warmer day. And then any little bit warmer day, I haven't made my way in there. So that's going to be on the docket for this spring is cleaning out the garage. But as well as that, it's going to be part of the finances too.
So let's just dive right into it, Drew. So, three ways to help you spring clean this season. So, Sri writes, number one is to tidy up your taxes. Everyone knows the beginning of the year brings filing taxes. It can be a dreaded thing for some people, or some people might really look forward to it if you plan on getting a tax refund. But Sri writes, you need to always keep in mind how you'll cover the cost of that if you owe back into taxes. So do you have money set aside to pay taxes? How are you actually going to do that? Are you going to write a check, use a credit card? And then also, if you're expecting a tax refund, what are you going to do with that? How are you going to plan accordingly? And it's something really important, Drew, to think about is what the heck should you do with your tax refund?
Yeah, just to back it up a little bit with the how you potentially are going to pay. These are one of those items where I can be a little bit of a procrastinator. So I'm sure other people are as well. Where if you were planning to maybe you do have to pay back, it's better to get your tax return done sooner than later. Because if it becomes the last day and you have to pay in by that certain tax day and you don't have it planned out, you might be scrambling a little bit. So I would say don't procrastinate like me. Get on your tax return a little
Yes.
bit earlier. So if you do end up having to pay in, you have a little bit more time to make a plan if you haven't made one already. As far as the refund, that's kind of like the fun one. I guess you see money coming back into your your account. So there's a lot of options you can do with it. So this might be that time that you can start that emergency fund that we've been talking about. And you haven't had this money all year with you. So kind of think of it as living your normal life. And this is just extra bonus money that you can put towards something that you've wanted to, but you actually haven't been able to. And I'm not necessarily saying toys or, things that are going to, be there for a day or a week, but it might be something to help put you better into a financial situation.
And if you do get a tax refund and you are planning on that each and every year, I think you should start thinking about, well, should you at the end of the day? So basically, what a tax refund is, it's an interest free loan to the government. So basically, you pay more in taxes throughout the year. And then when you file taxes, then you're going to have that refund where a lot of people look at it as, oh, hey, I've got this amount of cash that I can use to spend it on whatever. And some people think of it as almost like a gift. Well, I can tell you this much, Drew. The government's not giving you a gift when it comes to taxes. And the thing, the downfall of that approach is that rather than investing that money, if that's what you were going to do, you're getting that interest free loan to the government and then getting that cash back. So, now's a good time to think, oh, well, do I actually want to do that? And if not, then maybe you need to revisit how you file at your job and what type of allowances and deductions you're taking. So maybe you can get more back in your paycheck every 2 weeks or every month or however often you get paid, and have a lower refund during filing season, or maybe no refund at all.
Yeah, that's a great point that you are able to revisit your W 4 that when you normally started at your employment, your employer, you have to fill out this W 4 and put how much you want to claim for your taxes that come out. But the nice thing is you can revisit it. And on that, if this is your spring cleaning time of year and you want to check out this W 4 and you realize, hey, I actually don't want to be giving this much money to the government. I'd rather spend the money myself. You can change that, what you claim. I guess if you don't even know what you're claiming right now, you're probably claiming a zero, which means you're probably giving the most amount to the government as possible. But I have to say, when we were at our family business and I dealt with employees and their W-4s, a lot of them did look at it as like, I know what you're saying. I'm giving the government
Yep.
money, but I don't trust myself with the money. So
Yeah.
if it comes back at a lump sum later in the year, that's how I'd rather have it.
I mean, if people struggle with saving, this is basically a way to force save throughout the year, and whether you actually use that money then to better your finances, or maybe, I've heard of people using this pot of money as a way to fund their family vacations, and that, is 100% okay. And if deep down in your core that you're not going to be able to save money, this might be a good way to actually save it by continuing to put more into, or have more withheld from your paycheck every time you get paid, and then get that refund at the end of the year.
So this is a great time to start thinking. If we can toss out any type of options, you could potentially start that emergency fund. You could potentially pay off debts. You could put it towards that vacation that you've been wanting, or maybe you end up putting it towards, maybe there's some really cool item that you've been looking forward to for a lot of years that can potentially hold some value, or I guess maybe not if that's what you're into. But these are all items where if you can look at the options out there that we can just name a few, it can start getting your wheels turning and thinking, what do I want to potentially spend or save this tax refund money on?
Drew, and I'm glad you brought up debt, because that really brings us to the second item here on the spring cleaning list, is to declutter your debt. So whether you are have a your debt, or maybe you aren't sure of all the debt that you have out, now is a really good time to look at all the debt that you have out and start to organize it, with the intention of beginning to pay it off, or maybe start paying it off a little bit faster. So Sri writes that no matter which debt you choose to pay off first or work toward paying off first, make sure your next step is having a plan to pay for the other debt loads that remain. And I think, Drew, this is a super important step, because I truly believe that each and every year you should look at your finances holistically, and debt is a huge portion of a lot of people's lives. And now, since you are trying to spring clean your finances, it's a really good time to look at the debt and see, hey, can I start to pay off this a little bit faster and reach some of my goals a little bit sooner?
Yeah, actually, one of the commenters on this article, this Barnes, uh, says, for one of his options is, he says, choose the debt with the lowest balance, highest interest rate, or the one that provides you with the most angst. And he also goes on to, or he or she also goes on to say, there's no perfect rules of where to start. Begin with a desire to boost your financial confidence. And I think that's very important. We've talked about that in the past with, there really isn't the perfect way of canceling debt. We've brought up potentially the debt snowball that we've liked, just for the fact of the mental game, just saying I got debt out of the way at this small chunk. I don't have to worry about it. But there's also the option, like he or she even says on here, with paying one with the lowest balance, highest interest rate is another great option. And that could potentially be like a credit card when you're paying 22, 24% interest. So that's definitely one you don't want to have around.
Yeah, so you've got the debt snowball. So that's what my family used to pay off all of our student loans and car loans. But then you also, Drew, like you say, the debt avalanche, which is basically the flip. So the debt snowball is you pay off the smallest balances first, and you build that snowball up, and then you pay off the largest balance last. Well, the debt avalanche is kind of the opposite. It's you're paying off that highest interest first, and then you work your way down to the lowest interest. But regardless, like you were saying, Drew, regardless of how you want to pay off debt, it's really up to you, and it's really truly up to whatever makes you feel the most confident or the less anxious when it comes to your money.
Yeah, the big overarching, thought here is it's time of year where, like we've talked about in previous episodes, you really want to collect all of your information and see where you're at. I have this debt, I have this debt, I have this debt, I'm paying this much per month, and then I also have this much remaining on my balance, and here are my interest rates. It's a good time to take your debt inventory for the type of year, and this could be the perfect time to do it.
Especially now, Drew, with the government putting a pause on student loans for the last, well, almost 2 years. They're supposed to resume here, I believe, on May 1st. I could be getting that date off slightly, but regardless, pretty soon those debts are going to start to become due. So it's a really good time to think about if you have student loans, if you haven't been paying towards them in the last 2 years, it's a really good time to start making a plan to resume those payments and maybe even put a little bit extra to get those out of your life even faster.
Yeah, there's actually in this article a cool app called Chipper, or it's a website. Never heard of it before, and it's fairly similar to Acorns. And there's three options in here, but the one they talk about in this article is it will round up whatever you spend. So if you have a coffee for $3.75, it will round it up to $4, and that extra 25 cents will then go towards your student loans. So I think it's kind of cool that it's normal day transactions that you would do, and you don't really carry change around in your pocket anymore because everything's on the card. This is a way for that extra change electronically to go towards your student loans, which is also, I think, pretty awesome. And I guess what I was reading is it even shows you on the track you're at how much sooner your debt will be paid off and how much interest you'll save on it, which is pretty awesome.
I think it's fascinating that these types of apps exist because it might not sound like a lot, 7 cents here, 25 cents there. It might not sound a lot, but through the course of a year, we're talking hundreds, if not, $1,000 or $2,000 that you potentially might be putting away by saving that change each and every time you have a transaction. And what a great way to not actively put money towards your loan, but just basically throughout your day to day, you're chipping away at those student loans.
Yeah, the rounding up with change is something that I feel like when I was younger, I was always so excited when I would have a bucket full or piggy bank full of change and bring it to the bank, and they say, "Hey, it looks like you have $100." You'd be like, "I had $100 just in change sitting around," and that's something
Right.
that just kind of lost with all this electronic payments. So it's kind of cool to be able to reincorporate that, even though you're spending a little bit more money, it's actually going to pay off for some debt, which is something that you probably wouldn't expect to do anyways.
While we're talking about organizing your debt and potentially looking at starting up student loans, or maybe you're looking at increasing the amount of money you're putting towards your debt, all of that kind of revolves around a budget. And that brings us to the third and final way to clean up your finances this spring, and that's to groom your summer budget. So Sri writes, instead of waiting for June to roll around, prepare your summer budget a season in advance to help you get the most bang for your buck. And then he also writes, the overall goal of budgeting is to provide guardrails or financial safety around your money and your habits. Drew, I think if people have been listening to the Neighborhood Money podcast, they definitely know that we both are big advocates for budgets and for organizing your money. And I think the street nails it on the head that right now it's a great time to look at those summer months, because typically, at least in my household, summer months typically lead to higher spending because it's nice out. We live here in the cold Minnesota. We have those cold winters, but summertime in Minnesota is unlike anywhere else. So it's always a little bit more expensive as you're getting out, going to patios, going to lakes, and all of that stuff. So right now is a really good time to just take a look at that and budget accordingly.
Summertime in Minnesota, we it feels like my traveling goes up exponentially, going from my house to the lake or seeing buddies because the roads end up being a little bit better. It feels nicer being outside. So travel is one thing that you can potentially plan for, at least if you're a Minnesota person. But on top of your traveling, on how much more you may or may not do that, right now we live in a time where gas price is a little bit higher. So whatever you might have budgeted in the past, something to keep into consideration is potentially your fuel and how much you're willing to actually travel this summer.
I think that's a really good thing to bring up. Just inflation in general. It came in this last month at 7.9 or so. Again, I'm probably getting that number off slightly, but living is just a little bit more expensive right now, whether that's gas or groceries or whatnot. It's going to be a little bit more expensive to do really anything. And I think it's something that you need to consider because if you don't, there might be something that you might have to say, hey, actually, I can't do that, even though I really want to, just because I've spent my money elsewhere. And, being intentional, hopefully that comes across. That's one of my big things is being intentional with your money, and using a budget to do so can help you, whether it's reach your financial goals or make those plans this summer that you really want to do and not have to not do it because money's a factor in it.
Yeah, being intentional parallels this section of the article very well. It's, this Barnes that speaks in here is saying, if you are one of these vacationers, maybe something you want to do is prioritize your trips. I want to do trip A, B, and C. Which one do I really want to do? We'll put that one into the first slot. And how much do we estimate this is going to cost? And you don't have to be on Excel. You don't have to be on a computer or anything to do this. Just take out a piece of paper and a pen and just think of what you're going to do. Are you staying at a house? Will you be buying groceries? How far is it travel? What's the estimated fuel cost? And once you have that first prioritized vacation written out or estimated, you can then start planning a couple months in advance for that. So when you actually go, it's not as big of a hit and you already have an idea of where your money's going to be going.
So we're going to tidy up our taxes, we're going to declutter our debt, and then we're going to groom our summer budget. All three things from this article. But that's not all. We brought a couple bonus ones that Drew and I each thought of. So Drew, do you want to give the bonus spring cleaning that you came with?
Sure. So one bonus thing I actually am going to add a little bit, one to be put onto, let's say 1A, the tax part of it. Something I really like to do is keep electronic file of all my tax information and also a paper one. So, and it's come in handy where now in years like say this year, I've had to go back and look at previous tax years, and I can easily go into my computer and say, okay, I'm going to this tax year for this person. I have all the stuff labeled out, and I can just click into it, figure it right away, print it off, and I'm good to go. So that's one little tip and trick that I like to do. I'm also dabbling a little bit now into the Mint app, and you can actually pin certain transactions as a tax event. So then at the end of the year, I can print off all my tax events and they're in a piece of paper. I can give that to the accountant. Boom, that's good to go. So that's one little like 1A tip that I like to do. Um, and another thing to think about in the tax, this was, or not tax, into the spring cleaning for me was subscriptions. And is it monthly subscriptions that you no longer use? Is it annual subscriptions that you paid for that are coming up due this year? So like sometimes you might just have automatic enrollment into an annual subscription that you completely forgot about and boom, you get hit with it out of nowhere. So this is a great time to do it. And the reason it comes into mind for me is this is the time of property taxes. I just got what our property taxes will be, and that I think it's in middle of May that they're due. So it's a good time of year where your property taxes come in. You know what you're gonna be paying for the year on that, and if you're already looking and budgeting out for your property taxes, you might as well go look at your annual subscriptions.
Yeah, and those subscriptions can really come out of nowhere if you're not on top of them. I know I've not that we would have canceled them, but all of a sudden a fee of like whatever Netflix is, right? Or whatever streaming service, like all of a sudden you'll see that on your card and be like, what is this? But then, so I think that's a really good one is just to revisit because, now that we live in the streaming era and a lot of people just have a bunch of different streaming services. And you got to ask yourself, do you actually need all of those, or can you um, or can you just cancel a couple? Or actually, what I've heard of people do is they cycle through the different subscriptions. So, for example, they'll have next Netflix for a month. They'll go through all the shows they want to watch, and then they'll cancel, and they'll go through Hulu, and they'll just keep doing that, and watch
Gotcha.
the shows that they want, and then they go to the next service, and they just circle back when they get new shows,
That's a
which I
neat
think is a
idea.
pretty cool idea.
I actually might try that trick because I feel like I have way too many subscriptions right now,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I only have to watch them it's probably not even once a month on some of them I watch. So I actually might take that up as an option.
Well, there you go.
I also would like to add on there that one that I feel like will pop up to just not everybody, but a good amount of people is Sirius XM. I feel like they have price increases constantly. And if you're like me, you call and you say you're going to cancel. And next thing you know, you'll get a very discounted price for the next 6 months to a year. And then that time comes up. And the next thing you know, your bill pops, 6 months to a year later. And the monthly bill is $20 more. And you're like, what the heck? So I think Sirius XM is one where those potential promos where they get you, and then it's up to you to make sure that you know when that next payment is going to be increased.
Yeah, and everything is negotiable for the most part. But Drew, so my bonus tip, and this is what we are actually doing, is we're taking our tax refund. So I will preface this in the way that we don't try to get a tax refund each and every year, but with all the different law changes, we have two children, so they expanded the amount of money we got for our child tax credit. They also expanded the eligibility and the amount of money you can deduct for your childcare expenses. So this year we're getting a pretty good inflow of cash from our taxes. And what we're actually going to do with that is fund or partially fund a Roth IRA with it. And so rather than just taking that money and spending it, we're actually going to take that and invest it. And you can definitely do that because as long as you earned enough income above the $6,000 for a Roth IRA, you can use your tax refund for that. And I think it's a really good way, specifically for us, it's a really good way to fund that retirement with money that we really weren't expecting.
Are you gonna put any money towards your gutters this year?
Yeah, probably. I mean, it's all one pot, right? But gutters and all the yard work, I suppose, the actual spring cleaning. So you're probably right. We'll probably take a little bit of that and put it towards gutters.
Nice. Well, I know you had a pretty good lawn last year, so are you gonna keep that up? You gonna do any new tools this year for that lawn of yours?
Oh man, I was gonna actually bring this up on the podcast, but I'm like, no, people don't want to hear about this. But we got a vole infestation last winter,
A mole?
and our yard is just destroyed. It's not fully destroyed, but there's a big patch in the front yard. Our side yard going into the backyard is destroyed, and then our backyard has a really big patch too that just got terrorized by voles through the wintertime.
Vole with a
And
V or
so
mole with an M?
vole with a V. They're kind of like a little field mouse. So yeah, I will be putting a lot of time into the yard this year, reseeding and trying to capture those little things. All right, Drew. Well, that was the 3 ways to spring clean your finances this season. We gave a couple bonus tips, but Drew, I just think that generally speaking, now is a really good time to revisit your finances, especially as you're getting your taxes put together. You're in the mindset of money. You might as well work on some of this other stuff. But hopefully this article was a good resource for you guys, and hopefully you guys liked the tips that we had today.
What is PPI? It stands for the Producer Price Index. This is a monthly report calculated by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The Bureau of Labor Statistics, or the BLS, calculate the average movement and selling prices from domestic production over time. You can think of the PPI, or the Producer Price Index, as inflation, but showing from the producer or the seller side. There's also another report called the CPI, which is the Consumer Price Index, and this calculates inflation on the consumer side. In addition to the PPI monthly report, you'll also see the core PPI. This is pretty much the same thing, but it excludes the food and energy industries. So to wrap things up, the PPI is a monthly report showing inflation on the producer side. This is different from the CPI, which is the Consumer Price Index, which we will talk about in another Money Minute.
So, Drew, you heard a little bit about what's going on over in my neighborhood right now with the vole infestation and all
Hmm.
this that crap that has to go on in the yard. I'm not happy about it because I do try to take a lot of pride in the grass. But what's going on over in your neighborhood this week?
Well, kind of another uneventful week, but I have to say I did make homemade raviolis, and
Nice.
those are
You
always
sent
very
you
tasty.
sent a photo and they looked absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I sent the photo to uh, one of my other buddies, and the first response he goes, "Waste of time. You can buy noodles for $1.37." And I was like, you're probably right, but for some reason, I
No,
enjoy.
no, no, don't give in to him. It's not the same. Homemade noodles are far superior than store-bought noodles.
But being a personal finance podcast, he does bring up a good point about your time's money and the materials there. It might cost a little bit more, but I have to say, homemade noodles are much much better. And I told him I'm gaining skills while he's saving just a couple pennies. So if the apocalypse comes, I know how to make noodles and raviolis.
Yeah, when the zombies come knocking at your door, you're gonna be able to make raviolis to survive.
I will offer them raviolis and then they will protect my house. But no, I did that. So that was pretty fun. We just did cheese raviolis. It is Lent, so we'll save those for Fridays for no meat. Uh, but I have to say, we did try them that night. They tasted really good. My wife's sister came up and helped because she wanted to learn how to make some raviolis. And she was like, "So, how long are these going to take?" I'm like, "Well, normally if you're just making them for yourself, you could probably get them all done in an hour, hour and a half." But because she was there helping me, I'm like, I might as well make a bunch. So I made
Yeah.
6 times a normal batch.
Ooh,
And
nice.
we were standing up there doing stuff for like 4 hours. And I'm like, I swear, if it's only by yourself, it can be much quicker.
She's she's never gonna make raviolis ever again in her life.
Probably not. But I was like, I got helping hands. I might as well make a bunch. She can bring some home with her. I can bring some in the freezer. But they turned out
Yeah.
really good. I was happy about it. We did mozzarella, parmesan, ricotta, a
Nice.
little bit of
Nice.
spinach and mushroom inside,
Ooh, there you go.
and then
That
made a
sounds
little
like
home
quite the assortment.
and then made a little homemade sauce to put over the top of it that was cooking while we were making those. So
Awesome. Sounds delicious.
yeah, anything else other than your vole infestation?
Not a whole lot. It's pretty quiet in the neighborhood this week. We do have a birthday party this weekend that we're getting the house ready for. But beyond that, no, it's kind of just, you know, we're rolling with the punches, trying to get the house cleaned, and we're gonna have a good time this weekend celebrating our daughter's first birthday.
Wow. What you gonna do did she like and do babies get into anything at like one, or they just you just get them
Yeah, they
clothes?
do. No, I mean they have like their favorite toys and things like that, but nothing like a theme, right? Like for our oldest, he had a Batman themed party last year because he was really into Batman at the time. That's not really the case with a 1 year old, at least now with our 1 year old.
Our 5-month-old likes chewing on burp rags, so maybe that will be a theme birthday party.
Mm,
Just a bunch of burp
I would
rags hanging
I
from
would
the
love to see what that
ceiling.
looks like. Yeah, love to see what that looks like.
Bunch of house remotes to chew on.
Yep, there you go.
But good, yeah. Yeah, I think Jordan and I think we're still planning on coming down this weekend. So
Nice,
we'll have to
excellent.
we haven't got a present yet, so we'll have to figure that out.
I'll give you the 529 plan, the address, so you can slip a couple bucks in that.
Okay,
The gift that keeps on giving.
maybe I'll start Quint or your daughter a crypto wallet.
There you go. Not a bad idea.
Spring is upon us. This episode was fitting with spring cleaning your personal finances. Everybody goes and cleans their garages or houses, but this is a time of year where it's a great time to also clean your finances. And we went through a great article today that talked on the tax side, the budget side, and the debt side, and also just a couple bonus ones from Cavan and myself. We hope that this episode can bring some value that you can apply it this spring and just keep adding every year to your spring cleaning list, and even make like a little bit of list if that's something you want to do. But if you found value in this, we'd love to get a like or a subscribe from one of you guys. But all that said, we appreciate you guys listening again. We're here to make some more content in the future. We got a couple exciting interviews coming up here. So if you're into the interviews, we have about 3 on the docket for the next couple weeks or months. So we hope you guys can stay tuned, and we'll see you guys next week in the neighborhood.